So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Journey of the Soul, a fresh look at life, death, and the rest in peace. So I grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, where my father was the rabbi of a shul, and you could argue that it had a bit of an aging population. As a result of that, my father did many funerals, and I attended many funerals. So perhaps you can say that since I was a kid, I kind of grew up around death. But there was a common denominator that surrounded all of these deaths and all of the funerals, that they, generally speaking, were all people that were old. So in that context, right, death didn't necessarily feel relevant to me. However, when I was 23 years old, a good friend of mine lost his life in a car accident. And then a cousin of mine, right, dies in a jet ski accident. Then two first cousins of mine, right, died of cancer. And then recently we had this incredible tragedy in our community of David Cabrera passing away. These are friends, relatives of mine in their 20s, in their 30s, and in their 40s. And all of a sudden it makes you realize that we are all mortal, right? Our time here on this earth is absolutely limited. And now we find ourselves in the midst of a pandemic where 24/7 we are surrounded by the possibility of illness and death. It's at every corner. So the reality is that there's no person who has not experienced the loss of a loved one, which brings us, of course, to many, many questions. Question number one. Is death the end, or is there more? Is death painful, right? When the soul leaves the body, what's that like for the soul? What's that like for the body? Can we remain connected with those that we loved and that are lost? Do our loved ones communicate with us? How can we heal after experiencing devastating loss? How can we comfort others for their loss? Do we believe in reincarnation? These questions, as well as many, many more, are going to be addressed during this course. We are going to be taking an in-depth, comprehensive look at what Judaism, as what the Torah has to say about life, death, and what lies beyond. But there's going to be an absolute focus throughout each and every one of these lessons, not just on a theological and philosophical and theoretical perspective, but we are going to emphasize how the information that we're going to learn can have a real practical impact on how we live our life today in a richer, deeper, and in a more meaningful way. Tonight we begin the course, lesson number 1, demystifying death. We begin with a question. What feelings does the subject of death and mortality invoke in you? What words come up in your head when you think about your impending death? No, such a positive and joyous question. Feel free, unmute yourself if you want to comment.
Anxiety.
Anxiety, absolutely. Anyone else have a similar reaction to thinking about your own death?
Sadness.
What was that?
Sadness.
Sadness, absolutely.
Fear.
Fear is actually quite common and it's quite natural. There's a very fancy term for fear of death. Anyone know what it is? The fancy word? It's called thanatophobia. Have you heard that word before? Thanatophobia is the natural fear of death. Death makes people uncomfortable. But why? Why are people afraid of death? Why is death a concept, a topic, something that's so uncomfortable? Well, for one reason, death represents the great unknown, right? The finality. It's over, it's done, it's finished, right? That's pretty scary stuff. Psychologists have come up with a fancy term for how we deal with it. It's called the terror management theory. Psychologists believe that our awareness of our own death influences many elements of our lives, that subconsciously, many of the decisions that we actually make are rooted in the fact that we are anxious, right? That we are fearful, and that we're uncomfortable with the fact that one day we're gonna die. So what do? Right? We develop coping mechanisms. What are the coping mechanisms that we deal with? The primary coping method is ignoring it. Right? If I don't think about it, if it's not on my mind, right, perhaps somehow we can push it off and maybe it's never going to happen. However, right now, the COVID-19 pandemic has provided the perfect storm of fear and anxiety associated with death. Right? With news of the pandemic and of COVID, again, 24/7 coming at us from all sides, it's very hard to ignore. And for those who do ignore it, right, you're literally taking your life into your own hands. So we know this is not a healthy way to live. To be anxious, to be in fear, not a good idea. So we are going to explore this evening a healthier approach to death. We're going to explore the Jewish notion of death. In order to really appreciate the Jewish perspective on death, we have to appreciate the Jewish perspective on life. Question number one, what does it mean that you're alive? Or more specifically, right, who is the you that's alive? When you say that you are alive, what does that mean? Who am I? How do we define ourselves? Now, before we get into some more serious topics, we're going to do something a little bit lighter. Going to introduce a little comedy at you, produced by a Wisconsin rabbi that you might recognize.
Next. I told you before, mister, I don't care if you laugh or not. They keep staring at me. And it don't bother me. You know why it don't bother me? Because thank God I know who I am. And I'm proud of it. Because there was a time I didn't know who I was. I don't know if you heard about it. I didn't know who I was. I went to a psychiatrist. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I did. He took a look at me right away. He said, this is not you. I said, this is not me. Then who is it? He said, I don't know either. I said, then what do I need you for? He said, to find out who you are. He said, together, we're going to look for the real you. I said, if I don't know who I am, how I know who to look for? And even if I find me, how I know if it's me? Besides, if I want to look for me, what do I need him? I can look myself. Or I can take my friends. We know where I was. Besides, I said to myself, what if I find the real me and I find that he's even worse than me? What do I need him? I don't make enough for myself. I need a partner. 10 years ago, I'd be glad to look for anybody. Now I'm doing good. Why should I look for him? He needs help. Let him look for me. He said, the search for the real you will have to continue. That'll be $100, please. I said to myself, this is not the real me. Why should I give him the $100? I'll look for the real me. Let him give him the $100. What if I find the real me? He don't think it's worth the $100. Then I'm stuck my money with the real him. I said to myself, for all I know, the real me might be going to a different psychiatrist altogether. Might even be a psychiatrist himself. I said, wouldn't it be funny if you're the real me and you owe me $100? Tell you what, I'll charge you $50. We'll call it even.
All right, I hope that you enjoyed that clip and you're loosened up, right? You're a little bit more relaxed as we're now going to jump into some more heavy-duty material. So let's answer this question. Who am I? Number one, from the Jewish perspective, we are not our body. Not only that, we're not even our knowledge. We're not our intellect. We are not our emotions. And we're not even our desires. Because our knowledge, our intellect, emotion, and desires, at the end of the day, are a product and a result of our body. Who am I? I am my soul. Right? The definition of what a human being truly is not the body, rather it's the soul. Now let's look at text number 2. Text number 2, page 5. Now, Vivian Rothschild, would you like to read text number 2? No pressure, right? It's up to you. If you'd like, please unmute yourself and go for it.
You mean the text in the middle, the wise?
Yes.
The wise are aware that the human body is not the human being. When we speak of the human being, we are referring to the human's inner dimension. The body is merely a garment in which the soul is attired during its sojourn in this world.
So what this text tells us is that we are a soul that's in a body. We're not a body that has a soul. The body is just a garment for the soul. The body is just clothing for the soul. The body is the suit that the soul wears in order for it to be able to function and to interact with this world. I'll state it in a slightly different way. Does the soul need the body to be alive? Or does the body need the soul to be alive? Now, the answer is the soul doesn't need the body to be alive. The soul is alive. The soul, in fact, is life itself. The soul doesn't need a body to be alive. The body, on the other hand, most certainly does need the soul to be alive. To put this in slightly different terms, imagine you are sitting in a room and the sun is shining into your room and you feel the warmth of the sun shining on your face, shining on your body. Does the sun need your room in order to be able to shine? Absolutely not, right? The sun shines, the sun's existence is independent and separate from the room. So too, the soul doesn't need the body, right? The body is the one that needs the soul. The soul is alive and the soul is life itself. This idea is actually expressed in the story of creation. So you can turn into your book or you can look here on the PowerPoint. We have text number 3A and text number 3B. This is a description of how God created human beings. It says in the Torah, God formed the human of soil from the earth and breathed into his nostrils the neshama, the soul of life. Now the next text, 3B, is a description of how God created all other life on earth. God said, let the earth bring forth all kinds of living beings. Now, my question for you is, what's the difference between the way God created human beings and the way that God created animals? Do you see a difference here?
Mm-hmm.
All right, please feel, yes, Debbie?
I was going to say, when God created human beings, he created them with free will, whereas animals act, on instinct and do not have free will.
What you're saying, Debbie, is 100% correct. However, what I'm looking for is something in the text, right? Something that you can see and point to in the text that's a difference between creation of human beings and the creation of animals. Again, you could feel free to unmute yourself and shout it out, or I will just tell you.
The neshama that's in a human that is not in an animal.
So there definitely is a difference between the soul that's in a human being and an animal, but what's the difference in the way that a human is created and a way that the animal is created?
Hashem breathed forth, and for the animals, it was from the earth.
All right, Jim. All right, you got it. When God created the human being, he first created the body from the earth and then put the soul into the body. Okay? Human being, we have a body formed from the earth, then the soul is inserted into the body. When it comes to the animal, the life force and the body are created together. That means the starting point for an animal, body and soul are united and are together as one. However, when it comes to the human being, the soul existed before the body, the soul existed outside the body, and the soul exists independent of the body. It's only when the body needs to become alive, then the soul enters the body. So we're talking about a very different type of being. We're talking about a very different type of existence. The fate of the soul of an animal is exactly the fate of the body of the animal. When the body of the animal passes away, the soul passes away with it. However, the fate of the body and the fate of the soul of a human being are not necessarily connected. They're not necessarily interwoven. What happens to the body does not necessarily happen to the soul. Because this means that the soul existed before it entered the body, right? It was separate from the body. And after the body passes away, the soul will continue to exist separate from the body. Let's go to text number 3C. Text number 3C, this is on page number 7. Yossi Pearl, how would you like to read this text? You gotta just unmute yourself and go for it.
Where do I see? Oh, God did what? Is that the one? God did what he had done, what he had not done with any other creature. He blew into Adam with his Holy Spirit, a neshama that is immortal and does not perish when the body does.
The soul does not perish when the body dies. Now, when it comes to the body, right, aging is an inevitable process of life. Right? There's illness, right? There's death, and so on. But none of these things are relevant to the soul. The soul does not age. The soul does not get sick. The soul cannot decay. The soul does not die. Right? The soul is eternal. It's immortal. It's not subject to injury or to any of the other things that are subject of the soul, of the body. Now, this understanding is incredibly important to our discussion about how uncomfortable people can be about death and how fearful people can be about talking about your own death. But what have we established? The true you is not your body, right? The true you is your soul. And we just established that your soul is eternal. That means it's not subject to the finite, temporary, and limited nature of the body. That means that the true you is, in fact, eternal. And this gives us so much insight and really helps us tremendously with this issue of being uncomfortable with death. Because from the Jewish perspective, from the Torah perspective, death is not the end at all. Death is not the end. From the Jewish perspective, death is the beginning of a new phase in life. You cannot die. The soul cannot die. Rather, the soul takes upon a new level, a new perspective, a new angle at life itself. So let's recap what we've done thus far. The real me is my soul, not my body. The real me, the soul, is eternal, so I am eternal. The real eternal me is unaffected by birth or death. All right. Anyone have any questions, comments? All right, Phil. All right.
Yes.
You have a question. Yes, Phil.
Could you define in different terms or lay terms what the definition of a soul is and how an animal has a soul that's different than a human? I don't quite understand the link disconnect because I didn't know animals had souls. So I'm a bit confused as to what the definition of a soul really is.
So an animal absolutely has a soul, because everything that exists on earth, right, has to have a spark of divine energy. It has to have a soul that keeps it alive, that sustains it, that energizes it, and that ultimately defines it. But there's a different degree in sophistication when it comes to the soul of an animal, when it comes to the soul of a tree, when it comes to the soul of a rock, or when it comes to the soul of a human being. Now, we don't have the time to get too much in detail in the nature of the soul, but suffice, at least for this class, the soul of a human being has a unique and particular divine aspect to it that is separate from that which it gives life to. That means the soul of the animal's identity is tied down and connected to the animal that it gives life to. While the soul of a human being is not only limited to the body that it gives life to, because it existed as an independent being before the body, and it's going to continue to exist as an independent being after it existed in the body, right? The soul of an animal is not going to exist as an independent entity after it leaves the body. Rather, it merges and becomes one with its source in God once again. Now, I think that a lot of the discussions that we have in this class and in further classes will help clarify and give some more perspective on the nature of the soul. And this actually leads right into the very next question that we want to discuss. Because what does it mean that a soul exists independently from a body? It's something that we have a hard time relating to, because our only experiences of souls are of souls that are very much connected to a body. So let's explore some Jewish texts. We're going to look at a medrash, which describes the journey of the soul into the body. Right? Nancy Winston, would you like to read text number 4?
Okay, let's see.
It's on page 8.
Yeah, okay. 40 days before the conception of a child, God summons the angel in charge of souls and tells him, "Bring before me a certain soul that is now in paradise. Its name is such and such, and its appearance is such and such. This is possible because all the souls that are born in this world were created on the day the world was created and exist until the end of time." The angel goes and brings the soul before God. The soul bows and prostrates itself before the Supreme King of Kings. God instructs the soul, "Please enter the seminal drop that is currently in the hands of the angel in charge of pregnancy." The soul protests, "Master of the universe, I am quite satisfied with the world I inhabited since the day you created me. I am holy and pure, hewn from your throne of glory. Why do you wish to cause me to enter this putrid drop?"
This is a very fascinating text, right, which gives us a little bit of insight. It's like putting a little camera into what goes on in the heavenly realms and the interaction between the soul, the angels, and God before it enters the body. So tell me, what did we learn? What information did you gain about the nature of a soul before it enters the body? Again, you could unmute yourself and jump in if you have a thought here. Yes, Debbie?
That the soul is very content and happy in the heavenly realms before it enters the physical world.
All right, fabulous, right? We learned that the soul, as it exists in the heavenly realm, is happy. It's content. It's wonderful. It's perfect. It's great. All right, Jim, I saw that you had unmuted yourself. Did you have something that you wanted to add?
I was going to say the same thing. Very good.
The soul is independent, right? It has a life, and it's happy and it's contented with that life. But then we learn that the soul is summoned from its place in heaven, and it's going to be placed into a body. How does the soul feel about that? Do you recall how the soul felt about it? Bob, I saw your head is shaking there.
The soul,
What was I last time around?
We'll get into reincarnation in one of the later lessons, Avi. All right, Bob, yes, what were you going to say?
No, it's not, it's happy where it is. So it's not, it's thinking, why do I have to enter this putrid drop like this body?
Yes, soul's very happy where it is. It's
Right.
apprehensive. It is reluctant. The soul is not interested in going into a body, leaving heaven, and entering the world. Now let's look at the next text, text number 5. This is from Pirkei Avos, from Ethics of Our Fathers, which describes the attitude that the soul should have about the world. All right, Brad or Marilyn, would one of you like to read text number 5, page 10?
Yeah, Marilyn would love to read it, but why can't you read it?
We don't have a book.
You don't have a book. Did you not get a chance to pick it up, or?
We didn't know
We didn't
anything
know,
about it.
Okay, I apologize. There was an email sent that the books were available to pick up. We have one with your name on it. We'll make sure you read first next week, if I remember. Okay.
Thank you. That's fine.
Eileen Abrams, would you like to read text number 5?
Sure. This world is like a corridor before the world to come. Prepare yourself in the corridor so that you may enter the palace. A single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all of this world.
What does this text tell us about how the soul should be looking at the world and how the soul?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? If the soul is living in God's world and this world is also all of God's making, why would the soul look so badly upon coming down to this world to do God's bidding, to do God's work?
That is a fabulous, fabulous question. When the soul is in heaven, right, it's in its natural spiritual environment. It can see, so to speak, with its eyes, and it can experience God in a tangible way. Spirituality and godliness is concrete, it's tangible, it's natural. When the soul enters this world, it's like entering a foreign country, a foreign environment. Spirituality and godliness cannot be touched. It can't be experienced and felt in a concrete and tangible way. It's lost, and it's quite homesick. This is the experience for the soul in this world.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So the soul is as ill at ease with coming into our putrid bodies as we are with the thought of going to where the soul is. Is that our intellect speaking and not our soul?
No, this is the soul itself, right?
But the soul is not happy. So my question is, are we reflect? So when we are afraid or uncertain or scared about death, is that our soul speaking or our intellect? Because the soul should know that death is reuniting with our true place in heaven.
That is a fabulous question, and we are going to address your question tonight. So allow me to set the stage a little bit more, 1 or 2 more points, and we're going to jump right into answering your question. At this stage of the game, this is the point that we're making. The soul does not want to enter this world. The soul has an independent existence outside of this world where it is happy, where it is healthy, where it is spiritually plugged in. Going into this world is a tragedy for the soul. Ethics of Our Fathers say, how should we view life here? We are in the antechamber, we are in the corridor, we're in the hallway to the main event. What is the main event? The main event is the world to come. It's not about this world. We should know that a single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all of the world. Based on what we have said up to this point of the class, right, a person can make a very strong argument that life for the soul in the body is secondary to what it really wants. It doesn't want it and it can't wait to get out. Life on earth is a stepping stone to something much greater, the afterlife experience, the world to come. Based on what we said so far, there is zero reason to fear death because we are not our body, we are our soul. Our soul lives on, and not only does our soul live on, our soul has no interest in being here now and is looking forward to the great bliss of the afterlife experience. However, if I stopped right here, right now, you would not be seeing the full picture, and I would be doing a great disservice to you because Judaism has a lot more to say about this issue. We all know that Judaism places the highest regard, the highest value on life, right? Judaism values life. Preservation of life precedes almost all mitzvahs. Judaism is not a religion where people are focusing on the afterlife. It's not a religion where we are rushing to experience the afterlife. For 9 years, I was the Chabad rabbi in Olympia, Washington, and I spent every Wednesday for 3 to 4 hours at Red Square of Evergreen State College. I had to ask the Rabbi booth, and I interacted with probably hundreds of students and professors. The number one question that I was asked every single time and multiple times on each Wednesday for all of those 9 years is, what is the Jewish perspective on heaven and hell? There are certain religions that place a heavy, tremendous emphasis that what is life all about? To reach heaven and to not go to hell. For so many people, religion to them is all about heaven and hell. However, this is not what Judaism is about at all. Judaism is a religion about life. We celebrate life, right? What do we say? L'chaim, right? L'chaim is the most important, prominent, powerful greeting and expression that we could possibly say. Judaism values this world, right? That's what Judaism is all about. Now, here's the question. If the body is a drag for the soul, if the soul has no interest in being here, if the soul can't wait till it goes to the next world, why does Judaism emphasize this world? Right? I just made this whole declaration. Judaism is different than other religions. Other religions minimize the importance of this world and place great emphasis on the afterlife. Judaism does is exactly the opposite. Judaism maximizes the importance of this world and spends very little time focusing on the afterlife. Yet the whole introduction to this class was, the soul has no interest in this world, is looking forward to going to the next world. If that's the case, why does Judaism emphasize life in this world?
Because this is Joel Winston. I think it's because your soul will learn more through a body than it will through the spirit form. And to get closer to God, I think we have to learn through a physical body.
There's definitely some truth to what you're saying, but Hasidic philosophy actually says the point of the soul coming down into this world is not for any benefit for the soul. It's not. When the soul comes down to this world, it benefits the body, right? This is actually going to be the topic of one of the other lessons in the class. But Hasidic philosophy teaches us that the soul coming into this world, it doesn't benefit the soul, it benefits the body. So why do we emphasize this world, which means the soul in the body? Now, the answer is the only place a soul can do a mitzvah is in this world with a body. And if you are not familiar, I am telling you now, mitzvahs are very important, right? mitzvahs are absolutely important. Even though it's true that the soul would rather be in heaven than be on earth, nevertheless, the soul is here because it has a critical, it has a vital mission and purpose to fulfill, and that can only be accomplished, it can only be done with the soul in the body. Because of this, Judaism is overly concerned with life. It's so concerned about preserving life. The focus is all about life and not about the afterlife. This idea is expressed beautifully in a story in text number 12. We're skipping around a little bit, but don't worry, we will get back to it. Text number 12. Let's see, Andrew Cohen, would you like to read text number 12? It is on page 17.
Yeah, I didn't pick up a book, so I'll go next week.
Okay, let's see, who has a book? Marty, would you like to read? Just unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yep, go for it.
When Rabbi Judah the Prince fell ill and lay on his deathbed, Rabbi Thea entered and found him weeping. "My master," exclaimed Rabbi Thea, "why do you weep? Was it not taught if one dies smiling, it is a good sign for him? While weeping, it is a bad sign for him." Rabbi Judah replied, "I weep because of my inability to study the Torah and observe the commandments after death."
So Rabbi Yehuda was weeping on his deathbed, not because he was scared about dying, not because he was in fear of the unknown, not because he was in fear, not because he feared the finality of what life represented or what death represented. He was crying for the loss of the opportunity to do a mitzvah, because doing a mitzvah is so critical and it's so vital. And this, in fact, is God's response to the soul. We read earlier in text number 4, the soul is protesting. The soul is complaining. The soul doesn't want to go to the body. What does God respond? Text number 7. All right, Mitchell or Arlene, would one of you like to read text number 7? Page 13, text number 7.
God hurries to reassure the descending soul. The world to which I am bringing you will prove more beneficial than the one you presently inhabit. Indeed, I formed you exclusively for the purpose of creating mortal life from this particular drop of seed. With that, God forcibly installs the soul.
So God says to the soul, right, I know when I understand how much you enjoy the experiencing the bliss, right, the pleasure of the heavenly experience, but that's not why I created you. I created you to fulfill a critically important and vital mission for me, and that is to fulfill mitzvahs. So I need your soul to enter into a body on earth. But taking all this into account, right, aren't we sending kind of mixed messages? Right? On the one hand, we said, the world is better for the soul because the soul can do mitzvahs. But what did we say in text number 5? A single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all of this world. How are we exactly supposed to balance these two ideas? What is in fact greater? Is this world greater, a body and a soul doing a mitzvah? Or is the world to come greater, where the soul is able to experience the spiritual bliss of a concrete and tangible relationship with God? For this, we go to text number 8. Phil, would you like to read text number 8?
Okay, that's pretty short. A single moment of repentance and of good deeds in this world is greater than all the world to come.
We just said a major statement here. This world is more important than the world to come. The world to come might be greater spiritual bliss and pleasure for the soul because it's in its natural environment, but this world is more important than the world to come. Now, this does result in conflicting emotions for the soul. The soul.
So I have a question quick.
Yes, Yossi.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Yossi, go for
But
it.
if this world is more important, then why not leave all of us here?
That is an absolutely fabulous question. And there was such an idea for that. Unfortunately, Adam and Eve kind of messed up the whole program in the Garden of Eden. But at the end of the day, it makes it a lot more interesting. There's a lot more that we can accomplish. I can send you some recordings of our previous course, Secrets of the Bible, where we spent some time discussing this issue, but that's definitely a great question. So the soul is pulled in two different directions, right? On the one hand, the soul is drawn after the spiritual experience of heaven. On the other hand, the soul feels the importance of its mission on earth, soul in a body doing mitzvahs. Text number 10, Jeff Gorelick, please. You just got to unmute yourself first, Jeff.
Against your will, you were formed, and against your will, you were born. Against your will, you live, and against your will, you die.
That's a fabulous text, right? What does Pirkei Avos tell us? Against your will, you were born. Because as a soul, you preferred to remain in heaven and not to be born in this world. However, once the soul enters into this world and it appreciates the value of what life has to offer, the value of what the soul connected to the body has to offer, the importance of it, against your will, you die. So on the one hand, the next world is more pleasurable. However, while the soul is in the body, it recognizes that this world is much more important. Now, what does this struggle that the soul experiences tell us about the way that we should be viewing life and death? So I'll tell you what this teaches us. It teaches us how to value life because this world is more important without the fear of death, because the next world is more pleasurable. So it's not a religion that says this world is everything, the next world is nothing. It's not a religion that says this world is nothing and the next world is everything. Absolutely not. Right? Judaism is all about life. It celebrates life and values life. But we don't fear death because death does not mean the end. So in Judaism, we value life more than anything. It's the most precious thing. Yet at the same time, we don't have that fear of death because we recognize that death is not the end. This idea is very powerfully demonstrated in a story of Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, the sixth Rebbe of Lubavitch. In 1927, the sixth Lubavitch Rebbe was arrested essentially for spreading Judaism in communist Russia. He was not just arrested in 1927, but he was sentenced to death. His sentence was only commuted after the involvement of the United States State Department, the Supreme Court, and a non-Jewish Russian human rights lawyer. But during the time that the Rebbe was imprisoned, he was interrogated and he was beaten brutally. He left prison a physically broken man. And he records in his diaries all of the experiences that he had. And look at text number 11. All right, Jim, could you please read text number 11?
I arrived in interrogation at the offices of the Soviet GPU. However, in keeping with my principles, I was not very cooperative. One of the interrogators raised a revolver that sat on the desk before him. He looked at me in the eye and mockingly said, "This small toy has incredible powers. It causes principles to melt away. It opens mouths. Under its spell, even mutes have become talkative." I responded, "You are quite mistaken. That toy only has an effect on the faint-hearted, non-believers, those with one world and multiple gods. We, on the other hand, have one God and two worlds. As such, I don't panic at the sight of your toy. It has no effect on me whatsoever."
This is an incredibly powerful story with a tremendous line. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the sixth Rebbe, says, we have one God and two worlds. As such, I don't panic at the sight of your toy. It has no effect on me whatsoever. The Rebbe is conveying exactly these two ideas. Why did he risk his life? He risked his life precisely because of the fact that he valued life, that he wanted to ensure that Jewish life could continue, it could thrive, it could flourish, and it could grow. It was all about life. Yet at the same time, he was not afraid of death, because death is not the end. Death is not where it ends. Death is only a new way, a new method of continuing to live. So this is a very powerful and nuanced approach to life and death. Life is precious, life is valuable, but it's not the end. Therefore, there's nothing to fear. But now we're going to kick it up a notch to a whole nother level, a completely deeper perspective on life and death. But before we do, does anyone have a question? No? Okay. So let's continue.
Rabbi,
Yes,
I have a comment, just going back. I think there was something very important to me that was not discussed. It was in the text, and that was on the midrash that we read about the about 40 days before conception. And what was important to me is that God actually chooses a specific soul for that particular person. So he is kind of the matchmaker in terms of the union, which I think is very powerful and very important.
Absolutely. When it comes to a matchmaker, this text here is from the Medrash, but exactly the same idea is found in the Talmud. However, in the Talmud, when it has the statement, it says 40 days, right, before the conception of the child, right, God says this soul, right, is destined to marry this soul. So the concept of a bashert, right, comes straight exactly from this source as well, that this soul is destined not only to be born to this child, but also to marry this specific person as well. All right, let's go to text number 13. And did I ask someone to read that yet? No? All right. Bob, please. Thank you. It's just a one-liner,
After
but
the demise, Sakita,
Tzaddikim.
Tzaddikim, righteous people are referred to as being alive.
Now that's quite an interesting statement, right? The Talmud says that tzaddikim, righteous people, right, after they're dead, we actually refer to them as being alive. Now, why is that the case, right? What is unique about tzaddikim that after they die, they would be considered to be alive? Now, if you want to look at it from the perspective of their soul, that their soul lives on forever, the soul never dies, that's true for everyone. That's not just true for tzaddikim. That applies to me, you, all right, your neighbor, and everyone else, right? That the soul lives on forever. That doesn't apply just to tzaddikim. So why are only tzaddikim considered to be alive? Now, if you want to argue that it's the legacy of the tzaddik that lives on in this world, the good deeds that the person performed, the reputation that the person had that continues to impact the world, that's why they're still alive. Again, that's an idea that applies to me, you, and to everyone. Even if we weren't on the level of a tzaddik, right? We still left their children or grandchildren in this world. We left good deeds. We left good memories. I mean, we left an impact with tzedakah that we did in the world. So how do we understand this idea? So we explained, we've explained earlier in the class that death can only relate to the body, right? The body is that which passes away, right? The body dies. But this is not just only the body. The body is temporary, but everything that's related and connected to the body is also temporary. It doesn't last forever. Food, right? The possessions that we own, the money that we have, the clothing that we wear, it does not live on forever, right? We can't take that stuff with us. Anything that is body related, food, drink, working, going shopping, all of the things that we do, hopefully to 120 years, at the end of the day, we can't take it with us. If our life is defined by those activities, the body-related physical things, then you know what? Death is a radical change. Because if the point and the purpose of life is eating, drinking, vacation, going to work, football, whatever it is that we do that's physical and body related, you know what? All of that stuff ends when you die. It is over, right? It is final. So from that perspective, if a person lives a life where the physical and the material is primary, you know what? Death is going to be absolutely a radical change. But as we said before, right, the soul does not experience death. Right? The soul is eternal. Similarly, anything soul related, anything spiritual related is eternal as well and doesn't die. So that means if our lives here on earth are dedicated to fulfilling the mission for which we are created, are focused and centered around spiritual aims and spiritual pursuits, then when a person passes away, nothing changes, right? Nothing changes. Let's go to text number 14. Right? Is there anyone who did not have an opportunity to read yet that would like to read? Nancy Phillips, would you like to read? You could unmute yourself. Right? No pressure. If you don't want to read, that's okay, Nancy. Let's go with.
You want me to read?
Go for it.
Here, okay. The life of the Hasidic righteous person is not corporeal, but spiritual, consisting of faith, reverence, and the love of God. This reality is reflected in the following passages. Of faith, it is stated, the Hasidic lives by his faith. The Tzaddik. Of reverence, it is stated, reverence of God produces life. Of love, it is stated, he who pursues charity and kindness will find life, and kindness is rooted in love.
What is incredible about what we're saying here about the tzaddik, we're not simply saying that the soul is eternal, therefore it's as if the tzaddik never died. That's not what we're saying, because as we said before, the soul is eternal for everyone, right? The soul is eternal for everyone. What's unique about the tzaddik, it's not just that the life of the soul continues eternally, The tzaddik experiences immortality in the bodily life that the tzaddik lived as well. Because when we live with eternal values, we too become eternal. There is a consistency between our life in our body and the life that we continue to live after our soul leaves our body. So it turns out that a person has two options for how you choose to live your life. A person can choose to live a life of death. Now, I apologize for the harsh terminology, but it captures the idea. If a person chooses to engage in life with things that are not eternal, right, with things that will die, then your life is subject to death, right? There's going to be that radical change because those things don't continue. However, a person can choose to live a life of life by choosing to focus and engage in things that are actually eternal. And then your life becomes eternal, not just your soul, even after death, which is why the Torah implores us, choose life. What does it mean to choose life? Text number 15. All right, we'll go back to Debbie. Text number 15, please.
Can I ask you a question really quick?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
if your soul chooses life and you have this sort of immortal soul, when doesn't that soul become, I don't know the right word, recycled again, where God could choose it to go into another body at another time?
Yeah, we are going to be discussing reincarnation in a later lesson, but just to briefly comment on it here, right? The soul subdivides, just like a candle subdivides. So when you take a candle and you light another candle, the original candle does not become diminished, correct? So too, when the soul leaves the body, right? Yes, the soul will be reincarnated once again, but it's like a candle that is able to impart light to another candle that doesn't diminish anything from the original candle.
Right. I think that was my point. Like, so if you have a tzaddik who comes down in another body, why are not a tzaddik again?
Because it's not the tzaddik that comes down into the next body. It's not the tzaddik. It's a part of the soul of the tzaddik, but it's not the tzaddik himself. Again, when we get to that, we're going to have a whole lesson that's going to talk about reincarnation, and we'll get into all the details and all the nitty gritty.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Yassi Pearl, how would you like to read text number 15?
All right. 15, okay. Behold, I have set before you today life and goodness, and death and evil. Choose life. The term life in the verse does not refer to corporeal life, nor does death refer to the result of the soul's departure, for which simpleton needs to be instructed to choose to live. Rather, each creation, while alive and fully existent, contains both life and death. The physicality of the object is intrinsically lifeless. Intrinsically lifeless. I knew I could do it. It is in a constant state of decline and deterioration. We observe this decline in every physical object as well as in ourselves. Our physical capabilities and powers weaken with time. By contrast, the spiritual and divine within each thing is alive, eternal, and not subject to destruction or deterioration. God forbid.
So what this tells us is that every choice that we make is, in a certain sense, it's a choice between life and death. It's a choice between mortality and immortality. Now, you remember what we said earlier in text number 5, that the soul should view this world as if this world is a corridor, right? It is the antechamber, it's the hallway to the afterlife. based on what we said over here, we totally revolutionize what that means. That doesn't mean this life is not important and it's the next life that's important. That's not what it means. It means we should live our life in this world in such a way that's consistent with the values of the next world. Because when we live this life in a way that's consistent with the life, with the values of life in the next world, we truly are eternal, right? You truly never, you truly are never going to die. All right, where am I? Hold on a second. PowerPoint is holding up. Okay. So when a person lives their life, right, with these eternal spiritual values, then when a person passes away, your life is essentially unchanged, right? And it's undisturbed by death. That is why for a tzaddik who truly lives their life according to spiritual values, even after they passed away, they're alive. Because their life is centered on and surrounded by the same things as they were before. Now, this is the deeper meaning of the response of the sixth Rebbe to his interrogators. He wasn't simply making the statement that the gun doesn't scare me because I know that my soul lives on and eternally. What the sixth Rebbe was saying is that the concept of death is not relevant to me, right? It's not something that you can scare me with because you can't take away my life. My life is not defined by its connection to the body. When my soul is in my body, I have a mission and I have a job to do. But my life is not defined by my physical life. If my life was defined by food and drink and sleep and vacation, then yes, right? If you put a gun to my head, it's going to change. It's going to be altered. It's going to be dramatically affected. But the Rebbe was saying something much deeper, right? That death is not relevant because there's nothing that you can take away from me, because I am alive and life never ends, right? Very, very powerful stuff that the sixth Rebbe was saying. So to conclude, the antidote for our fear of death, right, or for our uncomfortability around death is to truly choose life. It's to truly live life. Again, this is the most powerful response to the fear of death. Why are we afraid? It's final. It's over. It's end. It's done. Right? What is, if, and yes, that's true if life is about pizza, football, cars, and clothes. However, if your life is about soulful things, right, eternal things, then your life does not end and your life cannot end, right? We have the ability to live a life that is beyond death right now. It's up to us. The choice is ours. Choose life. So what this means is, if death scares you, contemplate the eternality of the soul. Like, if death scares you, do eternal things. Do fewer things that are limited and finite, that have an expiration date and an end, and do more of those things that are eternal, and you'll see that life never ends.
Lesson 1. Demystifying death. 1. The awareness of our mortality and the resulting natural fear of death influence many elements of our psyche, behavior, and life choices. Our perspective on death influences multiple areas of our lives. 2. The neshama, human soul, the true essence of the human being, is eternal. It precedes the body and continues to exist after the body is gone. While still in heaven, it does not desire to descend into a body. And when the time of death arrives, it resumes its native spiritual state. 3. The fact that the briefest spiritual experience of the next world is more pleasurable than all of this world does not diminish the reality that even a brief stay in this world is more important than all of the next. Therefore, Jewish law gives precedence to preserving life over nearly every mitzvah. 4. This perspective allows us to appreciate and value life without fear of death. 5. While our corporeal needs and endeavors die with the body, our soul-focused aspirations and actions live on eternally. Thus, when we live and identify with eternal values, our current life continues even after the body's demise.
Right, I want to open up the floor for some questions in a minute, but just a few final points, right? So number one, we said next week is lesson 2, taking leave. So we're going to talk about is the number one, the process of the soul departing from the body. We're going to talk about the continuing and evolving relationship that the soul has with the loved ones that remain alive, right? So that's what we're going to talk about next week. There are additional readings at the end of the lesson. So at your book, at the end of the book, there's additional readings for further study, as well as if you go to myjli.com/soul, there's further information as well to continue to explore the topic of today's class. We have a question here. Yeah, okay, I'll get to that question. I'll get to you in a second, Yossi. I need to know who did not pick up their book and who needs a book. So if you could please unmute yourself and let me know. I know it said Debbie Gorman, I know you said you didn't get a book. Andrew, you said you didn't have a book. Who else does not have a book?
We have just one. If there was an extra.
And you would like it, and you would like another one. Okay.
You want another?
Yeah.
Yes, because we write in it.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Anyone else?
I did not pick up a book.
Okay, hold on a second. Who was the one who said they didn't pick up a book?
Gail.
Gail, okay. All right, we'll get for Gail.
We can pick our book up tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else not have a book, would like a book, or only has one and needs a second one? Because you are
I'd like a second one if possible. I'm willing to pay for it.
Okay, I may have to do that. I'll let you know. Okay, so hopefully that settles that question. Next, this class is being recorded, and I'm going to be posting it to the show's YouTube channel. I'm requesting from you that if you feel that you have gained from the first class and you feel that the rest of the classes would be sufficiently beneficial for some people that you know, please share the link with them. It's going to be included in the recap email that's going to be sent tomorrow. Please share it and invite your friends to come and attend the course. They can still sign up. They can watch the first lesson, and it is approved for continuing medical education credits for doctors, for psychologists, for therapists, for social workers. There's opportunities to actually get those credits. So please let them know, and let them know that they have the ability to get these credits as well. And finally, there are 2 really beautiful songs that were included in this lesson, but we didn't have the time to show them during the class. So I'm going to include them in the recap email. So there are 2 beautiful songs that directly relate to the content and the material that we studied that you might enjoy, and I think will add to your experience of the class. So make sure to look for those links and to watch them. That will be sent in the recap video. And finally, Yossi Pearl has a yahrzeit tomorrow night. So we're making a minyan at 6 p.m. at the shul for Ma'ariv. So anyone who's able to come at 6 p.m. for the minyan for Ma'ariv, you could please let me know after the class. I'd be greatly appreciated.
And thank you in advance to whoever.